All right. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Ziegenfuss U. This is Monday. Yesterday was the second Sunday in Lent, and the first lesson that we read. Joan, what lesson did you read? Go right here. Genesis.
Chapter 12, verses 1 through 4.
All right. See this? Right here. Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 4. It's the first lesson. Now, the sermon was on John chapter 3, verses 1 through 17, and Mrs. Isaacs was complaining because she said it was very long. Well, yeah, I only did the tip of the iceberg, right? A lot of material in here. And so I always feel obligated to preach on the gospel lesson. And I have to walk away. I'm like, oh, you have to walk away. Especially from this lesson, Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And I said, hey, we'll do this at ZU. Okay? So let's start with, John, why don't you read it? Because you did such a good job. Yeah, well, no, just right here. Just make the lesson right here. Yeah, the same lesson. And everyone has one in front, or you can follow along in your own Bible.
The Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him.
Now, wasn't that fantastic? I think it's great. All right, now, we've been working in the book of Genesis, and we have the 12 stages of the book of ages. The creation stage is Genesis chapter 1 through 11. Genesis 1 through 11 is the creation stage. And there we meet Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah and the ark, and the Tower of Babel, which we'll talk about another time. That's in Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 16. Okay? So that's the creation stage. Beginning here and now, chapter 12, verse 1, we begin a new phase in Bible history. So remember, Genesis 1 through 11, do you get in a fist fight at a theology bar at 3 o'clock in the morning over finding Noah's ark, or finding the shin bone of Adam, or the rock that killed Abel, or no, remember, these are stories that their theological and literary content is so important that we don't care if you can go and find archaeological evidence of it or something, right? So in other words, why do you want to know these stories? You want to know these stories because it's the foundation for the rest of the Bible. Remember, what is the Bible about? 1, 2, 3. Creation, the fall, and then from Genesis 3:15 on, it's about redemption. So there's 3 phases here. So 2 of the 3 phases of the Bible, actually all 3 phases, are found in Genesis 1 through 11. So, again, if you only read one book of the Old Testament, you want to own the book of Genesis. You want to read it over and over and over again, especially Genesis 1 through 11. Get those stories in your head, right? Then we have this story where we shift gears. So instead of a series of general interesting stories, we zero in on one man and one family. One man and one family, right? So, now, why do we want to know about Abraham? I don't care. Or you want to know about Abraham because he's a central figure in where? The New Testament, right? What do you mean? I printed out a list, and the name Abraham appears in the New Testament 66 times. How do you remember that? 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 in the New, 66 total books. The book of Isaiah has 66 chapters. Isn't that interesting? So Abraham appears 66 times. What's the most important appearance of Abraham in the New Testament? Matthew chapter 1, 1 through 17. Somebody quick, look that up and read a couple of verses there. You want the genealogy. You know me, I rant about this almost every Sunday, right? It's like, oh, come up with something new. Even if you just read the first, read the first 2 verses if you can get to it.
Chapter 1.
Yeah, Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, I'm sorry, 1 through 17, but just read 1 and 2.
Okay, I got it.
Go ahead, read it.
A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham.
Ooh.
Abraham was the father of Isaac. Can we keep going?
Keep going.
Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah, and his brothers, Judah the father...
Okay, stop right there. Okay, so these are the patriarchs. First of all, you want to know about Abraham because Abraham is an ancestor of Jesus. Stop. Why do we care about that? You want to know about Jesus, that's why you come to church. So this genealogy, beginning of Matthew, you should have like, mark it out in your Bible, and then every time, okay, Abraham, go back in the Old Testament and read every time Abraham is mentioned. Get to know Abraham. Then you want to get to know Isaac. Then you want to get to know Jacob, who wrestled with the angel, and he received the new name Israel. Means he wrestles with God or fights with God. Okay, and then Judah is the fourth son of Israel. And who is Jesus? He's of the tribe of Judah. That means he's a Jew. He's a Jew. Jew is abbreviation for of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so why do we care about Genesis chapter 12? Well, because it's talking about a person that's related to Jesus. Okay? Okay? And then, I'm not going to go through all 66 of these. I really should someday. He's mentioned in Matthew, Mark, Luke. He's mentioned in John. In the book of Acts, he's mentioned. Right? St. Stephen gives a sermon in Acts chapter 7, just before he gets stoned to death. St. Stephen, deacon and martyr. He said, "Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia." Okay? So when you tell the story of the Bible, like St. Stephen did, what are they going to do? They're going to kill him because he's preaching about who Jesus is, that he is the Messiah related to Abraham. So in his chant, right before they stone him to death, he gives testimony. So he retells the story of the Old Testament, starting with Abraham. Okay? It wasn't have to start with Abraham. So if you want to know the story of the Bible, this is it. Okay? And then it goes on in the writings of Paul. Paul mentions Abraham, Romans over and over and over again. Galatians, 2 Corinthians, the book of Hebrews. Why do you want to read the book of Hebrews? Someday we'll do a Ziegenfuss U on this. The book of Hebrews is in the New Testament, and it's the key to understanding the Old Testament. It's like the key that unlocks the entire Old Testament. So it's how should Christians think about the Old Testament? The book of Hebrews. Okay? And Abraham plays a prominent role there. He's mentioned in the book of James, and in 1 Peter, St. Peter says, even Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are. So that's the last mention. So he's mentioned 66 times in the New Testament. I don't know about you, but I want to know who this person is and what's the big deal about Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 3. Okay, so that's the purpose of today. Now, as we begin this, let's back up a couple of verses. Okay, so go to, I'm going to switch Bibles here. I have all my Bibles all laid out, although I need a bigger table, right? All right. Genesis chapter 11 is the Tower of Babel story. 2 seconds on this. What is it? It's human beings get together to reach God under their own, this way, okay? The book, in Pentecost, in Acts, the Holy Spirit comes down. So the Pentecost event is the opposite of the Tower of Babel story. So we pair those together. Probably this year, when we do Pentecost Sunday, we'll talk about that. Now, why did the people in the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 want to build a tower? Well, chapter 11, verse 4, the people said, "Go now, let us build a city and a tower which will reach unto heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." To make a name? Okay, name. Okay. Put a little red flag by that. We're going to talk about that in a couple of seconds with Abraham. Okay? Then, starting with Genesis chapter 11, verse 10, these are the generations of Shem. Stop. Noah had 3 sons. Who are they? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Remember the OT map from last week. Okay? Shem is the father of Asians, Shemites, Semites, anti-Semite, anti-Shemite. Okay? Africa is the father of Hamites, Ham. Japheth is the father of Europeans. Okay? So here we start with Genesis chapter 11, verse 10, the generations. Okay, the Hebrew word is toladoth, right? It means, it's called a toladoth formula. This is where so-and-so beget so-and-so, beget so-and-so, beget so-and-so, beget so-and-so, okay? Those toladoth formula stories are in there. Why? The Bible is obsessed with genealogies.
Which is good.
Well, I'm just telling you, it's obsessed with genealogies. I mean, that's good or bad, it just is. Okay, they're obsessed with it, right? So this is why, and what are you supposed to do? What's the first commandment again in the book of Genesis, chapter 1? Be fruitful and multiply, okay? So it's all about family, clan, tribe, the generations, da-dum, 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 toladoth, 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 okay? Now, from Adam to Noah is 10 generations. From Noah to Abraham is 10 generations. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Okay? So these threads go back. And so chapter 10, who is Jesus? He is a son of Shem. He's a Shemite, a Semite. Okay? So we're interested. We like Ham. Ham is fantastic. Ham and cheese, you can't beat it, right? We like Ham. We like Shem. We like Japheth. That's interesting. But the Bible is about the Shemites. Okay? So we're following that particular genealogy strain. Okay? So, all right, so chapter 11, all right, then we go, we're going on so-and-so related to so-and-so and so-and-so. We get to chapter 11, verse 26, and here we meet Abram, but I'm going to call him Abraham. He receives a new name in Genesis chapter 17. What's that? Why did he receive a new name? This is one of the interesting things about the Bible, that when people meet God and God cuts a deal with them, a covenant, he gives them a new name. So Abram becomes Abraham, Jacob becomes Israel, Cephas becomes Peter, the rock, Rocky, okay? So getting a new name is an important thing. And remember, in the ancient Near East, are names important? Yes. Remember I talked to you about this before. You're walking through the desert, you trip on a lamp. You pick the lamp up, you rub the lamp, and out comes a genie. What's the first thing you want to do?
Name.
What is your name? Because if you know the name, you control the genie. Okay? Right? This works with teaching too. Like if a kid is acting up, you say the name, and if you really want it, you invoke the middle name. That means you're dead. The dreaded middle name. It means you have control over the demon. That's what it is, right? So the name is a very, very important thing. Okay? The name. So I'm going to call him Abraham. So this is where we meet Abraham. So what is this? You can mark this in your Bible. Genesis chapter 12, verse 26. You can just skip over that and go right into chapter 12. That is the beginning of the patriarchal stage. The patriarchal stage. Where is the patriarchal stage? It's in Genesis chapter 12 all the way to Genesis chapter 50, the end of the book. So the rest of the book of Genesis is about the patriarchal stage. And that means who? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob / Israel, and then the 12 sons, and Judah receives the line of promise. So it's the patriarchs are these four. Okay? Bruce in Ohio will want to know why that phone is barking at you. See, he picks up right there by the mic. Okay, so here we go. All right. So who is this guy anyway? And Terah lived 70 years and begat Toladoth, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the Toladoth of Zerah. Zerah begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. Stop. Who's Lot? The nephew of Abraham. We're going to be meeting him as we press on in Genesis. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity. Okay? So Haran, deadline. That's it. That's the end of him. And where does this start? Ur of the Chaldees. Stop. I don't understand the Bible, it's too hard for me to understand. Here's what you do. You get an atlas, right? Or you get a good reference Bible. In the back of your Bible, there's a map set. What do? Don't believe me, look up the map. Okay? Honestly, look it up, right? Remember, the Bible has funny names, and it has funny geography. And there's two kinds of maps: political maps, physical maps, and political maps. Okay, so that's why you need a map set, because political boundaries change all the time. Okay, so Ur of the Chaldees is where? I just happen to have this handy pocket-sized map with me today. Right? What is this? The Fertile Crescent, the cradle of Western civilization. Even if you're an atheist, you need to know this because it's Western civilization. Okay. And Mesopotamia is between the Tigris and Euphrates River. This is it. Right? Ur of the Chaldees is right here. That's one end of the crescent. It's like an upside-down moon. The other end is Egypt. This way, back and forth. What's the story of the Bible about? It's the Babylonians decide they're going to fight the Egyptians, so they come here. The Egyptians decide they're going to fight the Assyrians, they come here. It's all back and forth this way. One conquest after another, back and forth, back and forth. So it's good to refresh yourself with a little bit of the memory of this. Ur of the Chaldees, now, is that a real place? Yes, it is a real place. Archaeologists have done digs there, and from around 2000, 3000 BC, extremely sophisticated culture. It would be like Manhattan, right? Trading center. This has silted in, but it was a port city on the Persian Gulf. So there was importing and exporting there. Caravans ended here and importing and exporting on boats. Okay, so that's where he's from, Ur of the Chaldees, right? Now, this map won't go away because we're going to be talking about it a little later. So you want to, study that a little bit. Okay. So, then Abraham and Nahor took wives, and the name of Abraham's wife was Sarai. She receives a new name, Sarah, okay, later on, Genesis 17. And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, the father. Okay. All right, chapter 11, verse 30. Why do I make you read this? Because it's boring. No, I make you read this because you need to know this. Okay, ready? Sarah was what? Barren. Okay? And she had no child. Just to make sure you got the point. Okay, now, let me talk about this for a minute. In the ancient Near East, whose fault is it?
The woman.
It's always the woman's fault. It's a patriarchal society. They don't know about low sperm counts, go to the fertility specialist. They don't know about that stuff, right? It's always the woman's fault. The woman is barren. She's no. What is the job of a Jewish couple, a Hebrew couple? Be fruitful and multiply. If you're not being fruitful and multiply, okay, first of all, fertility is a gift from who? God. Now, if you're pagan, it's a gift from the gods. Okay? If you're barren, what does that mean?
Yeah, God's favor.
That means that God has, maybe you're a sinner, you've done something, and God is punishing you in the worst way possible, right? I think the worst way to punish you would be to have like 4 redhead boys.
At once.
I wanted to say girls.
Girls, yeah, that's even worse. 4 redhead girls. Oh no! Right? All right. No. So, but in the ancient world, remember, in our society, remember the difference? In our society, children are a liability. In the ancient world, children are an asset. So the more children you have, the bigger your family, clan, and tribe, which means more fighters, more producers, more income. Like your own private, like the Crips and the Bloods, they want to have a bigger gang, right? So fertility is considered a blessing from the gods. And if you don't have any children, no pitter-patter little feet around the tent, it's the woman's fault. There must be some sin or some secret thing. So when she would go out around town, what would people say? Rhinebeck, right? Yeah, the gossip network, right? So she wouldn't be a woman like, she's held in great honor. She's the father of many people. No, she's a loser, failure, right? Right? And when is this theme introduced? One verse after you were notified that Abram marries Sarai. So what does that mean? The author, just look at it from a literary point of view, is planting the seed. There's a problem here. Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Right? It's like a foreshadowing of a problem. Now stop. Is this a delicious thing? Yeah. It's one of the Old Testament themes, the book of Genesis, okay? Godly women always have trouble having children. Ungodly women, they pop them out like this, no problem at all. Right? No limit to the number of ungodly women that yeah, it's amazing. It's like one of the themes. So there's always a threat that the godly line is going to be cut off. It's almost like you have like tension. It's like watching a suspense movie, Alfred Hitchcock. I can't believe it. This is how can God pull this off? And if you read the story of redemption, right? Remember, what's the Bible about? Creation, fall, redemption. It's not a straight line. It isn't like Genesis 3:15. The seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. Okay, Eve thinks that their firstborn son, Cain, is going to be the Messiah who's going to crush the head of the serpent. Problem solved. No more sin and death in the world. No. God tells a story that's like this. It's like trying to follow a drunken guy walking down the street. Right? It's not a linear story. It's a story like this. And you're always thinking, we're not going to make it. Right? There's no way this is possibly, how can this possibly happen? Like, there are 12 sons of Israel, right? We're going to get to this at the end of the book. The oldest son is Reuben, right? Like grilled Reuben, yeah? Well, Reuben, is he the child of promise? Does the line go? No, it goes through Judah, the fourth son. Now, that's a stupid way to tell a story. The law of primogeniture, everybody knows that. Reuben is the guy, he's the man. Or how about this one? Jacob and Esau. Who was born first? Esau. And that means under the Hebrew laws, he gets a double portion of the inheritance. So he gets 66% of the estate. Jacob gets 1/3. What does the story do? Yeah. It goes like this. Jacob is the one, not Esau. And this happens over and over and over again. You're like, if I was going to make this stuff up, okay, I'm a lion skunk, I'm a fiction writer, I'm going to make this up. Would I tell a story like this? No, because it's ridiculous, right? I mean, this is stupid. It's like, no, Sarah has a kid and you move on. No, you have to drag it out for 50 years. See what I mean? So it's like, this is one of the things that's really astonishing about the Bible. That and the heroes of the Bible aren't like Greek heroes in legends and myths and so on. You know, they're perfect in every way. No, they're flawed characters. Sometimes they do things you're like, wow, that's David. But David was a man after God's own heart. Same with Abraham. He does some things that are kind of like, well, that's kind of nasty, right? I mean, that's not a good thing to do, right? And we'll talk about this later on, okay? Or do you want to hear about it now? Yeah, he ends up in Egypt, okay? He goes, right? This is like a recapitulation of the whole book of Exodus, right? So they go here, they go to the promised land, they go to Egypt, they go back in. So he's like tromping the ground that we're going to be familiar with as we move on to the rest of the Torah, right? So he goes to Egypt, and the Pharaoh says, wow, that woman is really hot. Hot tamale, right? Right? And Abraham says, well, I can't lie, that's my sister. Now, that's horrible, right? Why would you say that? Right? Well, because Abraham was afraid the Pharaoh would kill him and then make Sarah one of his wives. Right? So, I mean, what a horrible human, right? And so we have to deal with that problem as we unroll here a little bit. Okay? I think it's fascinating. Okay? So the problem of the godly women have trouble having children. That includes Rebecca later on. Okay? Okay, so don't go away. All right. Terah took Abraham his son, his Lot, and Abraham his son, the whole family, clan, and tribe. They left, right? They left Ur the Chaldees, which is here. In other words, they left New York City, Manhattan civilization, and they went out to like Alaska or something, right? Living out in the middle of nowhere, because this is uncivilized territory out here. Okay, it's dangerous to go wandering around in the ancient world without a huge army or an entourage, because you'll be attacked and they'll take your stuff. You know, you'll be kidnapped, or you'll be, if you're not killed, you'll be sold into slavery and they'll take all your stuff, all your cattle and all your, you know, okay? So Terah then, he's the one that kind of makes the move here, right? And where do they go? To the land of Canaan. What's that? That's going to be the promised land. Ham has a grandson, Canaan, and the curse is not of Ham, the curse is on Canaan. That's these people, okay? So we're going to be, this area is being introduced, and it's going to be fascinating when we get into Joshua stuff, right? Because they take over the promised land, okay? So again, all these themes are introduced. All right, now, and the days of Terah were 225 years, and Terah died in Haran. Haran is up here, right there. See this? So this is, the Fertile Crescent is this way. It's at the peak of the curve. Today we're north of, like, near Aleppo, right? So up in there. Okay, so that's where he dies. Okay? Now, with all that background, we are now into Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 3. Now, these three verses are so important that it's the theme of the entire Bible. So again, if you only know one book in the Bible, you should read Genesis over and over again, in the Old Testament. And if you only know a couple of verses, these are the three you need to know. Because everything else flows. This is like the premise, right? The premise leads to the conclusion. If you have the premise down, the conclusion will flow naturally. Root, fruit. So this is like this is really, I can't emphasize this enough. Okay? Now, here's the story. Now the Lord said, stop. Who said? The Yahweh said. Right? Capital L, capital O, so the ineffable name of God. The Yahweh said to Abram, stop. Who's Yahweh?
God.
Well, do we know that? What was Abraham's religious background? If you read in the book of Joshua, Joshua says Abraham was a polytheist. He worshipped the many gods of Ur, the Chaldees. The people that have walked in darkness have seen a great light. So Abraham, he would think that this is just, you know, maybe a tribal god or something. Remember, it's called henotheism. It means the god of the place. What does that mean? In the ancient world, there's a god that hangs around Wurtemburg, right? And as you get down toward Hyde Park, the god of this space diminishes, and the god of St. Peter's down there becomes very powerful. And then you get farther south, and before you know it, you're into the god of the CIA that inhabits down there. So they think gods are like regional, okay? And so if you come into this region, you have to sacrifice to the god of this particular region. That's called henotheism, god of the place, okay? So Abraham would have thought, well, it's just the god of this place. Haran, up here. You know, it's the God there. Right? Okay, so let's keep going. And again, remember this? The creator-creation dichotomy. Okay? That's really important to know. Creator-creation dichotomy. God, here, creator, created the heaven and the earth over here. We are creatures, right? Polytheists believe this. Remember? Pantheism, all is God, God is all. Many gods, 330 million gods in Hinduism. Abraham is coming from here to there. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. Who's the polytheist in the ancient Near East? Everybody. Right? So this would be considered of like deviant behavior. Okay? And so the Yahweh said unto Abram, stop. One of the odd things about the patriarchal stage, which is Genesis 12 through 50, is that God talks directly to the patriarchs. Sometimes it's an audible thing, sometimes it's in a dream, sometimes it's a vision, you know. So God appears directly to these people, which is kind of interesting. And the Yahweh said, okay, God spoke. Is that sort of important? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, the Word was God. John 1:1. The Word, right, means the glue that holds together the creation, but it also is the God creating the heaven and the earth with a spoken word. He speaks ex nihilo, out of nothing. He creates the whole universe. So our God is a talker. He talks, right? And God says unto Abram, get thee out of thy country. How do you say that in German? Get thee out?
Geh hinaus von meinem Land, deinem Land.
Get out. Okay?
You
Now,
can say, raus.
now is that a big, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Rouse. Get out. You probably have heard that many times before in your life, haven't you, Robert?
No.
All right, so get out. Now, is that a big deal? No, it's not a big deal. What's a big deal? I don't see the point of it. Ready? Get out. Get out of your country. What does that mean? Family, clan, tribe. The dude has got it made in Ur of the Chaldees. Right? They know him. How many? Well, 10 generations going back. Right? He's got land. He's inheriting all of the wealth of his father. Right? Like, as long as you stay in the family business, that's considered normal. Honoring your father means staying in your family business. Be the fighting arm of your father's empire. Like a Bedouin chief or something. Okay? So when he says, get out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, what does that mean? Hernando Cortez, he left Cuba, and he's going to invade Mexico, and he's going to take on the Aztec Empire. And he has a couple of hundred men with him. He puts the ships on the beach, and he burned the ships. Why? There's no going back. You want to go back? You can swim to Cuba. If you don't want to swim, you come with me and conquer the Aztecs. That's Abraham, right? He's burning the ships on the beach. I don't know about you, Mrs. Isaacs, would you like to move at a homestead up in northern Alaska? We could live off the land and go to, have a off-the-grid housing and so on. No, she's from New Jersey, right? No, she's not going to give up, the family connections and electricity and running water and medical care and all this kind of stuff. No, you wouldn't do that. Why would you do that? Isn't that strange? Well, that's what he's doing. He's giving up everything, his whole security, everything he had. He's giving it all up, right? Okay. And if all right, and so get out. Okay, your kindred, your father's house, the land that I will show you. Stop. See that word "I will"? That phrase "I will." Have we heard that before? Yes, we have. Joe's excited now because I'm talking about Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 and through 15. Remember this? Lucifer. Right? Yeah, Lucifer. He's a musician, And so Lucifer says 5 times, I will be like the Most High. I will be like God. So rebellion in heaven is caused by Lucifer, a created being, saying, I will, I will, I will, I will, and I will. Here, in this section, Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 3, Yahweh says, I will, I will, I will, I will, and I will. 5 I wills. Right? Which I will counts. When God says I will, that means something. When Satan said he's a liar and a murderer and a slanderer from the beginning, he's a lying skunk. What do you mean you'll be like a Most High God? No, you're a created being. Right? There was a time where there's no Satan. Right? God exists on all eternity. So you see the difference? So it's like, wow, I will, I will, I will. Okay, I will what? Right? I go to the land that I will show you. Right? Actually, here, let me do a quick overview before we get into we'll do the general before we do the specific. You have to count to 3. Can we do this? Yeah, we count to 3 a lot in this church, right? Everything seems 3, right? Ready? Land, seed, blessing. Right? So, Joan, if you would have just said land, seed, blessing, you could sit down and not have to read the thing. Land, seed, blessing. God promises Abraham land, seed, and blessing. What's the theme of the Bible? God says, I will 5 times. He promises Abraham and his descendants land, seed, blessing. God makes the promise here. You put a red flag by that. The rest of the book is how God fulfilled it. How did God do that? You see? So if you understand land, seed, and blessing, that's the key to the whole Bible. Right? So God says, I'm going to do this. This is how God did it. Okay? Okay, so so here we go. So I will show you, okay? The land I'll show you. Verse 2. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so that you will be blessed. I will bless those that bless you, and curse those that curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Okay, stop. All right. Abraham begins a pilgrimage, a journey here. Okay? So what is the Bible about? The patriarchs are on the road. They're moving from one place to another, living in a tent, like Bedouins, kind of moving on, back and forth across the Fertile Crescent. Okay? And so let's do. So the land is what? The land is going to be fulfilled. I'm going to ruin the story for you. Is going to be Israel, the land of Israel. Okay. I will make your nation great. That's the seed. Okay. The seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. Okay. This is why Jesus is an ancestor of Abraham, based on the promise that God made right here. Okay. So we follow it down to generation. Before you know it, Jesus is the seed, and your name will be great. Remember in the story of the Tower of Babel, why did they build the Tower of Babel? To make a name for ourselves. When Satan tries to make a name, it doesn't work. When God makes the name, we're still talking about Abraham today. He lived 4,000 years ago. So he's the topic of today's discussion, and he mentioned 66 times in the New Testament. He's related to Jesus. That's kind of interesting if you ask me. Okay? So, make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Right? Who's Jesus anyway? He's the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Go into all the world, make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Right? So he is a blessing to the nations. Those that follow Christ are blessed. Those that reject Christ, they live dysfunctional lives. So that works? Okay? So he's a blessing. And I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. Okay? Isn't that interesting? It's the opposite of blessing is a curse. Okay? So the flow of history is going with Abraham and his descendants, because he's a man of promise, and the child of promise, which ultimately is Jesus, right? And those that resist, well, their lives are cursed. Because God's a horrible person? No, because when you reject God, the laws of nature kick in and you reap what you sow. See how that works? Right? Okay, all right, let me see. I want to make sure I get this whole thing here. So let's just do some general ideas on this. First of all, what did Abraham do to deserve this promise of land, seed, and blessing?
Nothing.
No.
He believed God.
Well, later on, we read this. God chose Abraham. God does whatever God wants to do. You know, the gospel lesson, the wind blows where it will, you know where it comes from? Well, God does whatever he wants, right? God chose Mary. Why did God chose Mary? Of all the women that ever lived, he picked her. Well, why? That's not fair. Well, God does whatever he wants. God is God, and you're not. First commandment, right? I mean, honestly, right? God does whatever he wants. I wouldn't do it that way. Well, you're not God. You're an idiot, right? No, you see what I mean? Like, you're on this side, and when you second guess God, you're saying, well, I wouldn't do it that way. Well, I would just tell the story in a straight... No, God tells the story in a convoluted way. Why is that? Because you can't say that somebody made it up. It's convoluted and complex on purpose. Because only God could possibly have driven this story from Genesis 12 all the way to the fulfillment of Jesus. That's only God can do that. Right? It's not a random chance is ruled out. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why it's so convoluted. It's grace. Grace in action. Grace is a free gift from God. Saved by grace through faith, not by works of the law. Okay? God calls this by the external word. Okay? So in the Bible, God always activates and triggers things with the external word, with a spoken word. Okay? How do we become Christian? Well, We're saved by grace through faith in Christ, but we also, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the Word of God. You come to church, you listen to the sermon, you pay attention during the liturgy, you pay attention when the Bible stories are read, you read the Bible yourself, you come to a Bible study like this. This is what feeds your faith. People, I told this story many times before. I used to live in the village of Rhinebeck, and across the street is a bed and breakfast. What a novelty, bed and breakfast in Rhinebeck, what a rare thing, right? So the woman that owned the bed and breakfast, horrible human, and she would go through managers like every 3 weeks. Like you'd chew the managers up. So I'd be out walking the dog, and this woman comes up. She was the new manager. Right? What a shop. And she says to me, I don't know. I just don't have faith in God. Well, I said to her, well, do you go to church? Oh, no, not in like 25 or 30 years. Well, what do you think? God's going to come to the B&B and make a reservation? I want to check into the B&B and have a discussion with you this morning as we're eating these stale muffins. Right? No, if your faith is weak, what do? He's like, I'm sick, I don't know what to do, I have the coronavirus. Okay, well, call the doctor and go to the emergency room. Don't sit around and complain about it. See, that's what people do, though, right? You have to go where the Word is and put the Word in your head for you to have faith. Don't expect to have faith. God's not going to appear, I was driving to Walmart. The strangest thing happened. A 900-foot Jesus appeared to me, and he gave me faith. Well, no, that doesn't happen. You have to go where the Word is preached and study the Word and take the Holy Communion, take the sacrament, right? Faith is an external thing, right? It comes to you that way. And you notice you have to do some heavy lifting. You have to, I'd rather sleep because of the time change. Well, get your butt out of bed and go, because you need to hear the Word more than you need an extra or lost hour of sleep. Can't remember. Do they move it ahead? Well, I don't know. It takes me 6 months to get used to it, and then they change it again. Right? They always need to, I'm never quite sure what time it is, right? I'm here at 1 o'clock because Linda grabbed me by the arm and dragged me down here, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Loud.
Maybe I'm probably confused with grace, but I thought faith was a gift from God.
Yes.
And then it's easy.
Yeah. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. So you have the external Word is what gives you faith. Grace, however, is a free gift.
That's the free gift.
So God would have it that everyone would come to Him, right? And if you just say, talk to the hand, I do what I want, get out of here, Well, that's your problem, not God's fault.
So we're not predestined.
Well, that's a 3-hour lecture, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're wrong about this. I've been fighting with this woman for 25 years. She refuses to admit that she's wrong.
Well,
If I wanted to fight with her that much, I would be married to her.
All I know is sleep is in Rhinebeck again.
No, when you go to heaven and you say, I believe in Jesus, and St. Pete lets you in, who gets the credit? God gets the credit, right? If you reject Christ, whose fault is it? It's your fault.
Right.
See how that works? Right? Right? I can't remember. Am I the one arguing in favor of free will? I can't remember.
Free will.
Are you sure? We've been fighting so long, I think we changed sides a couple of times.
He's saying what I've been saying all these years, Les.
Bobby Shepay, she might be the head of the altar guild, but she's a bitter, short little woman. I have many people that torture me. I have a miserable life here. All right, let me see here. All right, okay.
He got sidetracked.
And
Genesis.
And who is this? In Romans chapter 4, verse 17, Paul writes about Abraham and Sarah, their inability to have a child, and he says, God gives life to the dead and calls into existence things that do not exist. That's pretty neat. But we have that tension about, Sarah's barren, what's going to happen? God must be a lying skunk, land, seed, and blessing. He's 75 years old and his wife is 65 at this time. Right? Yeah. And when is Isaac finally born? He's 100 years old. Yeah, and that makes Sarah 90. Right? I mean, that's amazing, right? So for 25 years, Sarah's walking around and people are going, right? People are going to Abraham, you believe in a God who says you're going to get land, seed, and blessing? Sure. Oh yeah, 25 years. 25 years, right? That's longer than Bobby Shoot Pay's been fighting with me. Believe me, I'm a broken man. I've given up. All right? And this story, God always takes the initiative. Okay? So who's the mover in the story? God is the mover in the story. Abraham said, the Lord said to Abraham. Okay? All right, let me see. All right, now, let's do some other quick things here. Abraham, right, so this is a story, land, seed, and blessing, right? And then skip up to Genesis 15. It's part 2 of the saga, right? 3 times God reaffirms his promises to Abraham. Okay? So verse 15, chapter 15. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Okay? So again, God speaks directly, or he speaks in visions and dreams. And what does God say? Fear not. What? No phobos, no phobia. Abraham, I am your shield, and thy exceeding great reward. Notice that. God doesn't say the promise of land, seed, and blessing is the reward. God is the reward in himself. Isn't that interesting? Oh, I didn't get anything out of it. My bank account isn't full. No, God is his own reward. Right? Not the benefits you get from it. How would you like to be there? I only like Robert because he has a lot of money and he gives it to me. That's why I like him. Or I like Robert because of Robert. See the difference? Do you love God because God gives you things? No, because you love God because God is God. See? So God says. Then Abraham said, Lord God, what will thou give? What will you give me? I am childless. Okay. How old is he here? He's like 80 years old now. Okay. And he's been waiting a long time. I'm childless, What am I supposed to do? I'm going to give all my estate to this Eleazar of Damascus. That's his servant. Because this is the law in the ancient world. If you don't have, remember, why do you have children? Family, clan, tribe. You want to inherit the property. All right, so to keep the family, clan, tribe intact, the property has to go to the next person in line, and this would be his slave Eleazar. The house of Abraham would still be functioning, but it would be a different successor, not a biological successor. And Abraham said, behold to me, I have no seed. He's complaining to God. One born in my house, right? Now stop. Is that kind of an interesting thing? Yeah. Our God is a living God, and Abraham is not afraid to negotiate and argue with God. Right? Sodom and Gomorrah story, right? If there's 40 people, will you spare if he's negotiating, you're like, wow, that takes a lot of nerve, right? What would in the Greco-Roman mythology, what happens if you argue with Zeus or Jupiter? You get fried on the spot, okay? So there's no disputing, right? So that's a very interesting thing. Behold, the word of the Lord came unto Abraham. Okay, again, the external word said, this shall not be thine heir. In other words, Eleazar is not, but he that shall come forth out of thy bowels shall be thy heir. Okay, that's the King James stuff. So in other words, it's going to be a biological thing. Right? Right? This is amazing. Right? And now, what's more amazing? The birth of Isaac when Sarah is 90 and Abraham is 100, or Jesus walking out of the empty tomb? See what I mean? So if you believe the Abraham story, that's not, I think it's a greater leap than a dead guy walking out of the tomb. See what I mean? So if you know the Abraham story, you get used to the idea that this God does astonishing things that aren't normal. Okay? So he's done abnormal things before, he'll do it again when the dead man walks out of the grave. Okay? And so what does God say? He brought him forth abroad, and he said, So it's a starry night, okay? Now, have you ever been out to like Arizona or been out to the far west? They don't have the benefit of light pollution like we have around here, right? We have trees or light pollution. You see like a couple of stars if you're lucky. When you're out there, it's like, it's breathtaking. 180 degrees of stars, the whole canopy of heaven. Well, that's what the Middle East looks like, right? When you go to you're in the desert, no clouds, right? Why do you think it is that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all originate in this area? It's 180 degrees of sky, that's why, right? You realize there's something up there, our Father art in heaven, the Creator, the creation down here, right? So he brings them out on a starry night, and he says, and tell the stars if thou wilt be able to number them. And he said unto them, so shall be thy seed. What is it? Land, seed, blessing. Okay, so he's reaffirming that. So who's God talking to here? Abraham. He's an old man. And his wife's an old lady. And he's saying, you're going to have as many descendants as there are stars in the heaven. Yeah. How many stars are there?
A lot.
Yeah, maybe billions, you know? I mean, it's astonishing, right? When you're out here, you can't really appreciate how many stars are in the heavens. Okay? And what? And Abraham believed in the Lord, and it was counted to him for righteousness. Paul quotes this in Galatians chapter 3. Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him as righteous. Abraham believed God. Okay? So, is that kind of interesting? Yeah. He's an old man, and his wife is an old lady, and he believes that he's going to have a natural, biological kid, a son. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing, right? And he said unto him, I am the Lord. Okay? I am the Yahweh. Who is he? I'm the Yahweh that brought you out of the land of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land seed blessing, to inherit it. Okay? Stop. In a polytheistic world, right? 330 million gods, polytheistic world, right? Who is this God? You have to identify the God. Right? Is it a henotheistic God? Is it the God of, that space or something? No. I'm the God that did this. Why do you want to read the Bible? You want to read the Bible because this is the God who created the heaven and the earth. This is the God who chose Abraham. This is the God that led the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt. That's the God. See what that is? So this book reminds you and helps you to know who God is that did this. Okay? Does Satan get the credit? No, Joe, he doesn't. Okay? Does Baal get the credit? Or Zeus? No. These guys no, they don't get the credit. Who gets the credit? Yahweh gets the credit. And this is how he identifies himself. He identifies himself by his past action. Okay, by what he's done in the past. We don't have time to do this, but in Exodus chapter 30, God appears to Moses, right? And God says, I can't appear to you because you'll blow up, right? Holy profane, but you can hide in the cleft of a rock and I'll pass over you. So you know God through God's vapor trail. You know the contrail in the sky? You can see where God has been. That's why you read the Bible, to know what God has done in the past, because what he does in the past, he'll do in the future. Right? That's how you have faith in God. Okay? So he's identifying himself. And it's not some genie that popped out of a lamp in the middle of the desert and promised this, right? And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I'm going to inherit this? And he said, take a heifer that's 3 years old, and a she-goat 2 years old, and a ram. And he took it and he divided them in the midst and laid each piece one against another. And all right, so what does this mean? You've heard of a covenant. I'm going to cut a deal with that person, right? I'm going to cut a deal. I'm going to cut a deal with you. I'm going to buy land or something. Here's what you did in the ancient world. You take these animals and you kill them and you cut them in half. Is that a bloody mess? it'd be like blood all over the place, right? What happened here? It looks like a mass murder scene or something. And you put one half on this side and one half on this side. And what do? You walk between the halves of the sacrificed animals. Seal a deal in blood? Okay? Well, what do you mean? If I break the deal, you get to do this to me. Is that a serious thing? Yeah. It's more like, I'll just get a lawyer who'll get me out of it. No, it's like, you can split me in half and walk between my dead body. Isn't that amazing? Okay. Also, what do we call the 39 books in the first part of this Bible here? The Old what? Last Will and Testament. The covenant. The Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Okay? Covenants in the Bible, without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sin. Blood, sacrifices, altars, Holocaust offerings, cutting deals, blood is a part of, and why? Life is in the blood. Blood is a serious thing. Okay, so God is he's sealing the deal here. And when the sun went, a deep sleep fell over Abraham, and a horror of great darkness fell upon him. Okay, this is God is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of understanding. Right? So God, again, is not like George Burns in the movie Oh God, a nice old guy who smokes cigars and, no. God is a God where he's awesome and powerful, and when holy and profane meet, right, that's why he's terrified. Okay? This is called a theophany, an appearance of God. And Abraham, know for surety that thy seed be a stranger in the land, and there's well that. And also that nation whom they serve, I will judge, and afterwards. Okay, this is a prophecy of the 430 years they're going to spend as slaves in Egypt. Okay, and that's the Exodus story, which is going to be down at this end of. Again, Abraham works the Fertile Crescent. Okay, all right, and they're going to peace. All right, let me see here. All right, ready? Go to chapter 15, verse 18. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham. He said, unto thy seed have I given this land from the river of Egypt, that's the Nile, to where? To the great river Euphrates. So this whole area is really the Holy Land. That includes like Assyria and Syria, right? So the Sinai Peninsula, that's all Israel. Okay, so that's the land. Quick, let's skip up to chapter 17 very quickly. Now, between chapter 12, 1 and through 3, and 15, there's still no pitter-patter of little feet around the house. Okay? And maybe I should do 16 very quickly. I'll do 16 very quickly. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children. Why is that? Are you shocked at that? No, because we read about it in Genesis chapter 11 that she was barren. Okay? And she had a handmaiden, an Egyptian slave girl named Hagar. So Sarai said unto Abraham, behold now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go unto my maid, that it may be that I may obtain children for her. Why is that? Because, again, she's been the target of a hate campaign, a whispering campaign. She's a worthless wife, she's no good, she's barren, she's a horrible human, she must be a sinner or something. But if her handmaid, surrogate mother stuff, okay? And Abraham took Hagar, Abraham dwelt 10 years in the land, and he went into Hagar, and she conceived. Isn't that interesting? Right? Boom, just like that. Okay? Because again, the godly woman are barren, and it takes a long time with a lot of faith and patience. The ungodly one, boom, just like that. Okay? And Sarai said to Abraham, my wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid unto thy bosom. And why? In the ancient Near East, this is weird, right? Okay? Who is closer? The husband and the wife, or the wife and the son? It's creepy. Okay? Why? Because they have polygamy in some of these cultures. Okay? So if you're a woman, you go from your father, who gives you to the husband, then you want to make sure you have a son, because the son will take care and protect you, right? There's like a weird relationship, you know? Not like in our culture where we have husband and wife stuff. It's a different culture, but in the ancient world, right? So, does Sarah have a son to protect her? No. She has an old man as a husband. What happens when he dies? She's going to be out on her ear. How about this Hagar? She has a son to protect her. What does that mean? Better than gold in the bank. Better than money in the bank. She's got a son. Isn't that interesting? Okay? So her power in the household is diminished. She might be the first wife. Doesn't matter. Right? Her power is diminished. Hagar's stock went up because she is, oh, look, there's that Hagar, and there's the son of Abraham. See how that works? So in other words, it's like a real dig, okay? And then what happened? Well, of course, and there's domestic problem. Okay, stop. Is there polygamy in the Old Testament? Mm-hmm. Yes, there is. Oh, the Bible's a nasty book. I refuse to read it. I'm going to read trashy romance novels instead, right? All right? Now, is polygamy in the Bible, does it always lead to happy endings?
No.
Basically, it's no Brady Bunch. Well, what is it? It's constant conflicts and fighting. Right? And we're going to see this when we get into the family of Jacob, Israel. Okay, he has 12 sons, and there are 2 wives and 2 concubines, and there's all kinds of conflict and fighting. And so this is what happens when you have polygamy. Right? So the fact that it's in the Bible doesn't mean that it's correct or you should do it today. Remember The Gambler by Kenny Rogers? No one to hold him, no one to fold him. So when you read the Bible, you have to go, okay, polygamy is in the Bible, but no, Joseph Smith, you can't say, let's have polygamy in Salt Lake or in Palmyra, New York, because it's in the Old Testament. Well, no, it's in the Old Testament, but it's always a dysfunctional situation. And what happened? Well, Sarah, right, gets Abraham's attention and the kid and all that kind of stuff. And what happened? Sarah casts Hagar out of the household. Now, is that a big deal? Oh, I don't see. She could just get a job on, Indeed.com, and maybe she could, be a home health care or something. No, they don't have that. Women in the ancient world, if you're cast out, what does that mean? Dead, right? I mean, you want to be cast out into the wilderness with no fighting men, no food, no water, no tent? You're dead, right? So it's kind of like abandoning an animal or something in nature, right? So what happens then? Well, she's down on her luck, to put it mildly. And the angel of the Lord. Stop. See that phrase there, chapter 16, verse 7, the angel of the Lord? Some people think that the angel of the Lord is Jesus. It's an appearance of Christ before the birth of Christ. It's called a Christophany. Okay? And angelos means messenger. Okay? So it's not Yahweh that appeared. It's the angel of the Lord that appeared. The Word became flesh. Okay? So there's, in the Old Testament, there's the angel of the Lord appears, and some people say, yeah, that's Jesus before the birth of Christ. I think that's kind of interesting.
Pastor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our Bible here.
No, we're not going to do Isaiah.
No. It says, the angel Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit. The angel added, I will so increase your descendants.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Isn't that interesting? The I will pops up again. Yeah. That's why some people think this is an appearance of Christ before the birth of Christ.
Yeah.
Where
Right?
was that, Joe?
down in
Chapter
verse 9.
Verse 9?
Verse
Okay.
9, yeah.
And he said to Hagar, where do you come from and where are you going? And she said, I fled from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, return to thy mistress and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and thou shalt be numbered greatly. Right? And the angel said, behold, thou art child with a... behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and will call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man, And his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all of his brethren. In other words, he's going to dwell here in the Middle East. Okay? And she called upon the name of the Lord and spake to her, Thou, God, seest me. Behold, and Hagar bare Abraham a son, and called Hagar Ishmael. And Abraham was 60 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. Okay, so he's 86 years old at that time. Okay? Now, I'm debating what to do from here. All right. Put a red flag by this, and we're going to talk about it in a couple of seconds. Oh, are we out of time? Oh, okay. All right, quick. Let's do the next Abraham appearance in chapter 17. I'll save Genesis 22 for another time. That's where God almost sacrifices Isaac. But
It's 2:10.
okay, can I go for like just 5 more minutes? Okay. We had a slow start because we had to have the coffee and cake first. All right. Now, when Abraham was 90 years old, how old is he? 99 years old. The Lord appeared to Abraham, and he said, "I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect." Right? I will make my covenant between me and thee, and multiply thee exceedingly. He's 99 years old. He's been walking around the desert for 25 years, waiting for okay, land, seed, and blessing. I'm ready. Okay, any moment now. You know. Okay. So as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be the father of many nations. Okay, bring it on, dude. I'm ready. Okay. Neither shall thy name be called Abram, but Abraham. He receives a new name. Okay. So again, receiving a new name is a big deal in the Bible. Okay. And what does his name mean? Father of many nations. What is he? Is he joking or something? I don't have any kids. You call me father of many nations? What are you, like rubbing it in or something? Right? Isn't that weird? Okay. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful. Okay. Good time to start. And I will. Notice, I will again. I will and I will. I will make the nations before thee. Here, that word nations. In the Greek, the word nations is ethnos. Like ethnic, ethnos. In the Hebrew, it's goy, G-O-I, like goyim. It means people of the nations, right? Jews and Gentiles, Jews of the tribe of Judah, and goyim, people of the nations, right? So, goy, right? And the kings shall come out of thee, right? And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed, and thy seed after thee. Okay, stop. The promise that God makes to Abraham, Genesis 12, 1 through 3, land, seed, and blessing, goes from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob and then to Judah. That's the rest of the book of Genesis. So this promise is passed on to the next generation, and all the way down to who? To Jesus. Okay? So that's why Genesis 12 is really an important thing. Okay? And all right. And God said to Abraham, "Thou shalt keep my covenant." The agreement that we made, thou and thy seed after thou all generations, this is my covenant which you shall keep between me and thee and thy seed, and so on. Every man shall be circumcised. Okay, they introduced circumcision at this point. Circumcision is the Jewish equivalent of baptism. It's an initiation rite. Okay? So it means that you are part of the covenant that God made with Abraham. Okay? Again, without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sin. And on the 8th day, the 8th day, why is circumcision on the 8th day? God created the heaven and earth 6 days, rest on the 7th day. The number 8 is a number of new beginnings. Okay? And they've actually done like medical research on this. The 8th day, the baby is strong enough to withstand the circumcision ritual. Okay? Right? It's a long biological thing. It's very interesting. All right, every male born among you, okay. He that is born of the house, so on and so on, the covenant, right? God said to Abraham, right? So Sarah gets a new name too. Sarai becomes Sarah. I will bless her. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So she's lived 90 years, and she's known as Sarai the barren one. Okay. But now I'm going to bless her, and I'm going to give thee a son. and I will bless her, and she will be what? The mother of nations. Right? Kings of people shall come from her. And then Abraham fell upon his face, and he laughed. Okay, he laughed. Why did he laugh? He laughed out of joy, right? And, well, okay, the name Isaac means he laughed, or laughter. That's his name. His name is laughter, okay? All right, so he laughed. All right, we're over here. 17. And then Sarah, she overhears this, okay? So she's like outside the tent when this is going on, so she overhears this. And she says, I'm 90 years old, right? And Abraham said, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee, and Sarah thy wife shall bear the son, and his name will be called Isaac, and I will establish a covenant with him. Again, the idea, Genesis 12, 1 through 3, goes from the next to the next generation, okay? Multi-generation. And then Ishmael, and the covenant that I establish, right? And left off, right? Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he circumcised his foreskin, so he's part of the covenant. And then Ishmael is circumcised, he's 13. And then Abraham, right, so then they have a son. Okay, so God reinstates or restates the covenant that took 20 years to fulfill. Okay? And again, why is this a big deal? God promises Abraham land, seed, and blessing. And that verse, those verses, that's like the theme of the rest of the Bible. It's all tied together. Okay? This probably would be a good place to stop. Sorry to bore you.